Hello everyone! Today's video is going to be about The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, one of the biggest American novels of the 20th century. We will be talking about the plot of the novel, as well as its historical context. Then we will be talking about the major themes of the novel. And lastly, we will place the novel within its literary movement, modernism. Now let's start off with the plot. This is only going to be a short summary because it's way better the way Fitzgerald has told it. The story of The Great Gatsby is set in uptown New York around the 1920s, also known as... I should probably change into more appropriate attire for this. The Roaring Twenties, a time of extravagance, excess, flappers and jazz. The narrator of the story, Nick Carraway, moves from the Midwest to uptown New York, next door billionaire Jay Gatsby. The dreamy, beautiful Jay Gatsby. One day, Nick suddenly receives an invitation from Gatsby to attend one of his many extravagant parties. This strikes Nick as rather odd because he has no idea who this Gatsby guy is. In fact, a lot of people who attend his parties don't even know who Gatsby is. Lots of rumors are going around. I heard he killed the guy. I heard he's a German spy. Please, everyone knows he's a bootlegger. Gatsby sure isn't who he seems, and even what he seems in the novel is rather vague. Is he doing illegal stuff? Absolutely. Is he being portrayed for it as a bad guy in the novel? Absolutely not. All that we can know for sure, and that Nick knows for sure, is that Gatsby has been in love with his cousin, Daisy Buchanan, ever since Gatsby ever met her. Gatsby at the time was apparently too poor for Daisy's tastes, and Gatsby casually decided to get rich and buy a huge mansion across the bay from her. Too bad she's already married, you think? Well, Gatsby is not going to let that stop him. After weeks and weeks of Gatsby's and Daisy's affair, Tom Buchanan, Daisy's husband, starts getting quite suspicious and he confronts the couple about it. Gatsby and Tom argue at length about who it is that Daisy genuinely loves. Daisy claims that she loves both, but she eventually decides to return to Long Island with Gatsby, not her husband. Daisy drives Gatsby's car back to Long Island, but accidentally kills a woman on the side of the road and then speeds off. Gatsby, afraid that he will lose Daisy, asks Daisy to run away with him and therefore leave her husband. The husband of the woman that got run over in the meanwhile finds out that it was Gatsby's car who killed his wife and goes on a wild witch hunt to find Gatsby. The man eventually kills Gatsby in his own garden and then eventually shoots himself. Daisy never tells a soul that she was in fact the person driving the car, and Gatsby gets blamed for the woman's death. No one but Nick attends the funeral, and Nick decides to move back to the West, disgusted and disillusioned by the superficiality and decadence of New York and its people. As just said, Nick Carraway became disillusioned by the vibrant city that was New York. That sentiment was something that the author of the novel, F. Scott Fitzgerald, shared with his character. Fitzgerald became the very product of his own age and hated the shallowness that was the Roaring Twenties. However, just as Nick Carraway in the novel, he was also very much attracted to it. Who wouldn't be attracted to all the partying, jazz music and frivolity? Well, during the 1920s everything was great. There was a long economic prosperity and everyone spent their money like it was nothing. But then the Great Depression of the 1930s struck. Wall Street crashed and a worldwide economic crisis emerged. Basically, the richer became more rich and the poorer became even more poor. And that part about Gatsby smuggling alcohol? Well, bootlegging was a pretty common thing at the time. The production, import and sale of alcohol in the US had become prohibited, making it very difficult to get your hands on it. Naturally, a completely new industry of smuggling alcohol in the US emerged. We now call this the Prohibition era. All of this, the bootlegging, the excessive partying and the frivolous spending, made Fitzgerald completely disgusted with his own era. The themes that Fitzgerald puts forward in his novel really show that sentiment of disgust. The two major themes that we see in the novel are superficiality and the American dream. Superficiality basically means shallowness or lack of depth. Not only are the characters extremely superficial, but also their relationships between each other. Take for example Gatsby. The only thing that Gatsby wants in his life is his old beloved Daisy, which is pretty much the only thing the character consists of. All of the character's motives, like for example getting rich, are geared to getting Daisy's attention. Meanwhile, their relationship has no depths whatsoever. Gatsby is infatuated with the old Daisy, the Daisy of the past, but doesn't actually love the Daisy of the present. Meanwhile, the only reason why Daisy wants to be with Gatsby is because of his money, which is pretty much the only reason why she left him in the first place. Daisy doesn't actually care about Gatsby. She doesn't even show up for his funeral, for God's sakes. This makes their relationship utterly superficial. Fitzgerald also comments on the notion of the American dream. The American dream is basically this ideal that the US strives for. It stands for the importance of one's ability to be able to make something of oneself through hard work. At first, Gatsby seemed to be the perfect example of the American dream, but we quickly learn that he obtained his money illegally, making us aware that there is no such thing as the American dream. The latter, the loss of the American dream, is a theme that is very much tied to the literary movement the novel takes place in, modernism. Modernism is a literary movement that took place from roughly the 1890s to 1930s. The modernists tried to reject all previous traditions and truths. What they meant by this is that they realized that there is no such thing as an all-encompassing reality. The only reality that exists is our own subjective reality. Not only would they try to show the social-economic reality in their writing, but they would also try to render the human subjectivity through a writing technique called the stream of consciousness. With this, the author would basically try to write the way a person sees the world and other people. A consequence of this is that most of the narrators in these stories are unreliable narrators. The narrator of The Great Gatsby is Nick Carraway. All of the information that we are getting in the novel is perceived through his filter. Since Nick is such close friends with Gatsby, he portrays Gatsby as some kind of tragic hero, when we all know he is not. Not only that, but he also proves on multiple occasions in the book that he does not remember the story quite as well. This makes him an unreliable narrator. If you're interested in reading any other modernist novels, I highly recommend reading Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway. It's not too difficult and shows off the technique of stream of consciousness really interestingly. There! I think that's about it. We remembered the two major themes of the novel, superficiality and the American dream, and we also remembered the emphasis on the individual's perception, something that is very typical for the literary movement modernism. I hope you guys had a wonderful day, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye! As well as it's me. Do you see my glove? No. Putting on my glove, putting on the glove, putting on the glove. Wrongly. I look ridiculous. The narrator. Do I have something on my teeth? No. The narrator moves from not from uptown New York. People must think I'm so crazy right now.